Hey all, welcome to Share Trek. This is Raj here, friends. I'm making this video because we had some really good positive words coming from White House regarding softening their stand against the US, giving them a great deal, and that sustained tariff battle is not going to be sustainable for both the countries in the long run. All of that seemed to indicate a kind of reconciliation, and as a result, the market jumped up. And now the market has realized that it's just words and it's starting to come back down again. We are back from the critical resistance levels. We were not able to pierce through them, at least at this point of time, as I'm recording at around 2:55 p.m. That is the status. I don't know what will happen towards the last half an hour of the market when institutional investors might come in to do some dealings. But suffice to say, I think the China tariff issue is going to be a big catalyst, either positive or negative. So I wanted to have a quick look at what it is looking like from the Chinese point of view. So out here we have the CNBC. So I'm looking at the media coverage. So if you look at CNBC, it says Trump wants automakers to move vehicle production to the US. It's not that simple. Besant says China, US have opportunity for a big deal on trade. IMF forecasts US fiscal deficit to dip in 2025 thanks to higher tariff revenue. Corporate America will give millions to Trump's inauguration. Now it's upending many of their businesses. Creditors, short squeeze for the stock market's two-day bounce. And then, of course, we have a few other headlines out here. It's more US-centric, and some of the news that comes about China is basically about Boeing. CEO says China has stopped taking its aircraft amid trade war, and that's a legitimate big ticket item, so it has to get a headline out here. So this is what we have out here. But if you go on to Global Times, right, I went to their homepage, and in their homepage, as you can see here, they are focusing on made in China, China-Azerbaijan cooperation. Then they have what kind of a big deal do China and US need. I'll be putting up a separate video on that later. Auto Shanghai underscore China's growing global magnet effect, and potential Intel layoffs show woes of US chip making amid tariffs. And so they are trying to look at the overall global phenomenon and downplay US importance and try to build everything around US by having photo opportunities as well as news release about other countries meeting with Chinese leaders. China's approach becomes more and more attractive when people get tired of fighting. And China firmly opposes unwarranted accusation, political manipulation, says FM spokesman on Ukraine summoning Chinese ambassador. So the focus of China is basically to project itself as nonchalant, that it doesn't really worry that much about this US relationship problem, and that rest of the world is definitely coming towards China. And I went to the opinion column to see what kind of opinions we have. And one of the opinion column item was, faced with tariff extortion, appeasement, and compromise will only be like bargaining with a tiger for its hide. Global Times editorial. So the essence of this article basically is that the US is reportedly using tariff exemption negotiations to pressure its trade partners into limiting economic ties with China. In response, China has strongly condemned this tactic as coercive and hegemonic, warning it undermines international economic norms and global trade stability. And the key points from this article, which China is trying to drive across, is that the US is misusing its economic power to force others to pick side and isolate China. And such sanctions threaten the rules-based global trading system, which should uphold fairness and reject unilateralism. And it says that China's trade ties are deep and global. Decoupling from it is unrealistic and harmful to global supply chains. It also says that the international sentiment, including from the UK and other major economies, supports maintaining ties with China rather than yielding to US pressure. And events like the Canton Fair reflects strong global interest in continued economic engagement with China. So that's the key point out there. And the broader message in this article is that China is positioning itself as a defender of multilateralism and fair trade. The article warns that a move towards global nationalism, economic nationalism, and protectionism could damage global growth, especially in emerging markets. And it also tries to say that ultimately China is urging the global community to resist short-sighted appeasement of US pressure and uphold the principles of international trade cooperation. So this is what one of the opinion pieces out here talks about. And there is another opinion piece out here which says, what does American consumers' shopping spree in China mean? So they have got this picture of some American tourists shopping in China, and the core message of that article happens to be that China is transforming from a global exporter to a major consumption hub, attracting foreign consumers, including Americans. Despite rising US trade barriers, American tourists are traveling to China for cheaper, higher quality products, enjoying shopping, tourism, and favorable policies like tax refunds and visa-free entry. This trend highlights the failure of US tariff policies to curb demand for Chinese goods and the broader appeal of China's open economic model. So this is the core message that is coming out of this opinion piece. And the key points that we find in there is that there's a reverse shopping trend. American consumers are now traveling to China to shop for made in China goods, bypassing US tariffs and highlighting inefficiencies in Washington's protectionist policies. The other point they are trying to get across is that tariffs backfire. High US tariffs have made domestic prices uncompetitive, prompting consumers to turn to cross-border e-commerce or international travel for better deals. And I can, to a certain extent, relate to it. When I was in India in my growing years, we had a heavy tariff policy, and people who were able to visit abroad would come back with really good stuff with them. Some of them would go duty-free because of the natural exemption that you get for traveling for more than 10 days abroad, and the rest would attract some duty. So they would be able to buy the stuff that they want and bring it across. And there was a huge black market for these imported goods, and it used to command a lot of price. So those kind of things were happening, which kind of expanded the gray market or the gray economy, which was outside the control of the Reserve Bank or the central bank. So those kind of problems could turn up with these high levels of tariffing, because people will travel abroad and get things in. Again, continuing with the key points, it talks about China's global integration, and China's competitiveness isn't just about low cost. It's now a vital innovation and production hub deeply embedded in global supply chains. And China is saying that it's expanding its visa-free travel, tax refund services, and opening more sectors to foreign investments and foreign businesses, promoting itself as a welcoming and stable market. And it's also saying that international shopping tourism is part of a broader strategy to boost domestic consumption and global economic cooperation. And then it goes on to contrast it to the US approach, saying that while some countries build trade walls, China builds bridges, emphasizing mutual benefit over zero-sum thinking. And the main key takeaway from this article is that China's consumer market and pro-globalization stance are emerging as global economic stabilizers, and the trend of American shopping in China symbolizes a deeper economic realignment, one where openness and connectivity outshine isolation and protectionism. So this is the key takeaway from the article. And friends, what I'm thinking is that when we go back and look at our own perspective from the Western point of view, we look at and consume American media out here, at least in Canada. That's what I'm doing. My sources are CNBC, CNN, MSNBC, Bloomberg, and of course I look at Reuters. So those are some of my regular news outlets from where I try to get information. And when I look at it from the American perspective, my understanding is that US is projecting strength, and US is saying that, you know what, it's our terms. We own this economic order. We created this economic order, and we have subsidized everybody for a long time, whether be it in terms of being a major player in NATO, or being the global policeman, or making sure that the maritime shipping lanes are trouble-free and free flow of goods happen, and all of that. And this current administration feels that they haven't been compensated adequately enough. It's a very transactional approach. Previous administrations did all those things in order to have the soft power, which would be backing the US dollar as a global currency and the US Treasury bonds as a global last resort destination for funds. But the current administration has kind of taken an isolationist approach, and they feel that they have enough power to force everybody to bend their knee. And we had been given a 90-day time frame, because initially when the tariffs were announced, it seemed that it could not be done overnight because this requires a lot of logistical planning. So they gave us a 90-day postponement, and within those 90 days, US was supposed to negotiate with around 150 odd companies, 150 odd countries, and come back with trade deals, and then the flat counter tariffs will go away, and all these additional tariffs will be reconsidered, and there will be a kind of moderation, and tariff levels will go down. And during the negotiations, other countries will drop their tariffs, and US will also drop the tariff. And the idea was that somewhere down the line we may end up with zero tariffs with many countries, and it will be a much better position than where we were before. But unfortunately, the tariffs have come in for a reason, and US is not acknowledging those factors. It's not acknowledging the compulsions of foreign leaders and the responsibility of the foreign leaders to their own citizens and employment within their country. So as a result of which, we have seen that we have had lots of soundbite from White House, but we haven't seen a single trade deal inked out. And the most likely suspects for a trade deal are Israel and probably India, and maybe he could hammer out something with El Salvador, or with Hungary, something like that, or maybe even with Russia for that matter. So those are all likely, but we have not seen anything on paper with any of the big countries. Europe is trying. I think UK is also trying. So that's the situation here. On the other end, China has actually put countervailing tariffs. European Union has suspended its countervailing tariffs while it continues negotiation. But China has been forthright. It said, we are not going to be bullied. They raised the tariff to the level that US had done, and they raised it a little bit more, and US did a little bit more. So the way it stands right now, it is 145% US and 125% China, something in that range. And now US is recognizing that it's causing a lot of problems to the US dollar, to the US Treasury yields. It's also causing a lot of political unrest within the United States. A lot of pressure is coming on top of the president from the business community and from various sources. So now, in the midst of all this, President Trump made the mistake of taking on a battle with Chairman Powell, forcing him to reduce interest rates and calling him names and stuff like that. Immediately the reaction was that the share market tanked, and now they are on an apology tour, and they are saying that, we never meant to fire Powell. Powell is absolutely safe. There is no firing him. He can do what he wants. He has the independence. The bonds have picked up a little bit. And then he also said that China will get a great deal. I'm going to treat them very nicely. This is in response to China saying, we're not coming to the negotiation unless we are treated with respect. So that's been addressed. Now we have to see what China does. And if you look at the Chinese media and the summary that I gave you of the few opinion pieces and the few newspapers that I had seen, my distinct feeling is that China is a very strong negotiator, and they think Trump has blinked. And they are going to make it a tough negotiation from their side, because they know that Trump wants to put this behind and go ahead and do other things. And I think at the end of the day, we are going to see some kind of a compromise come through, and it can't come quick enough. Already the supply chains have been disrupted, and there's a backlog that is being created. I think that kind of inflation is going to be felt maybe within a week or so, and it could start trickling down into the economic reports that we get. So the White House is also in a good deal of urgency if they recognize that fact. So I'm thinking that sooner rather than later, we'll have some kind of a deal with China at the very least, and that will make it easy to make deals with UK and European Union, and things will start sliding back into a much better position, and we'll all heave a sigh of relief. And it can't happen quick enough. So that's my 2 cents on this whole thing. And I'd like to hear from you, our viewers. What do you think, especially our viewers who are more familiar with the China point of view and are also looking at the US media? Please give me your opinion from your point of view, how you look at China and what is the situation out there, because that can give us a little bit of a head start in positioning ourselves for the recovery that's likely to happen once a deal is struck. With that, my friends, I'd like to bring this special video to an end. I'd like to hear from you. If you like this video, please press a like out there. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe and help grow the channel. And I apologize for the morning live stream where we didn't have audio for a period of time. I made sure that I covered what I did in the later on. So sorry for that, and I'll catch up with you again in the next video. Bye for now.